Hey everybody, happy Tuesday. I hope everybody had a fantastic weekend. So today I am talking about why we hate tasting notes. And they are they're part of the wine world, but they're good and they're bad. So I'm going to start off with a little Shakespeare because, believe it or not, I can wrap this around, okay? So in Hamlet, Shakespeare talks about to be or not to be. That is the question. Whether it is nobler to mind to suffer the stings and arrows of outrageous fortune, or to take arms against a sea of troubles, and by opposing end them, to die, to sleep. No more, and by sleep to say we end, the heartache and thousand natural shocks. The flesh is heir to, 'tis a consumption, devoutly to be wished, to die, to sleep perchance to dream. Aye, there is the rub. For in that sleep of death, what dreams may come. So I think we're pretty much all familiar with this, okay? Because we all had to read it in high school. But how does that play into wine tasting? Well, Hamlet is contemplating life and death. He's pondering whether or not the human existence, technically his own existence, is worthy of continuing. Is his life his own life? Or is there some force that is guiding him through this right direction or wrong direction? And is there a greater force, right? And is this force happening or do we have a choice? And that's where this tasting notes come in. So while it's towards life, and tasting wine isn't exactly a life thing, right? Wine is an intimidating place, okay? And when we do tasting notes, we're kind of putting our force onto somebody else's life and we're directing them down a very specific path, okay? And I don't like that concept. So what I am talking about here is, when our palates have been developed way back when we were the cavemen, right? The reason we can taste these flavors is because it was technically what allowed us to know whether it was something safe to eat or whether it would literally kill us, right? So humans are capable of tasting 5 flavors: sweet, sour, bitter, salty, and umami, which is the savoriness. And honestly, not everybody even can taste bitter, right? So 4 definitive, but we are capable of 5. So remember, our ability to taste is a group of different sensations occurring simultaneously. Yes, it kind of involves our tongue, but in reality, it involves our nose. It's that retronasal ability, right? So when you're tasting something, you're really smelling it going up to your brain and it's changing your brain and how it works, okay? And how you're smelling something, okay? So the cool thing about taste is that it is also linked to emotions, right? If you are in a happy place, food can taste better, aromas can smell nicer, right? Think about if you walk through a field of flowers, it can bring you back to a different moment in your life, okay? Now, I won't go through the whole science thing, right? But taste is actually part of your involuntary nervous system. And that means these are things that we do not think about in order to do, right? So rest, relax, digest food, breathing, okay? Our fight or flight mechanism, these are all involuntary nervous system reactions. So our brain, and the biggest problem with tasting notes is that everybody's brain works differently. I see red, you see red, but how your brain interprets red is very differently. I taste a cherry, you taste a cherry, we are having different taste sensations in our brains. But somehow in this crazy universe, we can agree that that car is red or that you are eating a cherry. We can agree on that because that's what we were taught, but how our brain is sensing that is very different. So how those impulses are jumping across the synapses in our brain is very different, but somehow they both correlate to red or they both correlate to a cherry. So as a winemaker, right, I want people to experience my wine the way I taste it. But as a scientist, I absolutely understand that that is impossible to be done. So I'm kind of torn, right? As a winemaker, people expect me to have text sheets, including tasting notes. And I'm kind of happy to do them. However, when writing them, I'm going to taste something, I'm going to smell something, and I have very specific reactions to those. I may say our Cab Franc has milk chocolate to it. It's got lavender. And then somebody may not get those same flavors or aromas. When the consumer reads notes prior to tasting them, it's almost like we're bullying them into agreeing what our tasting notes are. Or even worse, not just bullying them, we start making them question themselves. Well, oh my God, the winemaker said that there's chocolate in here and lavender. How come I'm not getting chocolate or lavender? I'm getting rosemary, okay? So that's the biggest problem. So the brain itself is a marvelous organism, right? It's so complex, but it's so simple to trick, okay? If I hand you a raspberry and I say, hey, enjoy this strawberry, and now you taste it, your brain is doing a battling of what you see versus what you're tasting, okay? And it battles. And more often than not, what you're told is going to be true, especially if I'm blindfolding you. So I give you a cherry, and I tell you, enjoy this strawberry, and you're blindfolded. You're going to taste it, and you're going to go, I kind of thought that was a cherry, but she says it's a strawberry, so I must be wrong. It must be a strawberry, okay? So at Dracaena Wines, this is why we hate tasting notes, okay? We want you to smell and taste what you get out of the wines. We don't want to tell you what you should be sensing. So although we write the tasting notes, what our hope is that you taste our wine or any wine and you enjoy it, and then you can make your own tasting notes. And remember, there's absolutely nothing wrong with tasting a wine and just saying, I like this wine, or, this wine isn't for me, right? There's no need to decipher wine all the time, right? So I'm just curious, what are your thoughts on tasting notes? Do you like them? Do you not like them? And if you do like them, do you often read them before you taste the wine, or do you read them after you taste the wine? And what type of tasting notes do you like? Do you like the tasting notes of, oh, this reminds me of a warm summer breeze? Well, what the heck does that mean, right? But if that's what you like, that's cool, right? Or do you like, well, aromas of this, flavors of this, acidity at this level, and palate, medium palate, medium body, and long finish? Well, again, what's a long finish? 1 second, 2 seconds, 3 seconds? What's a long finish? So these are all issues that come across because your brain works differently than everybody else's brain on the face of this earth. So just curious, how do you feel about tasting notes? So leave me a comment and what you think about tasting notes. And do you read them beforehand or after you taste them? And if you're going wine tasting, do you want that person behind the table to tell you what these flavors and aromas are? Or do you just want to enjoy the wine, or, maybe not enjoy the wine? Let me know. So double hit that heart button for me and leave a comment, and I will see you next week. Sláinte!